So welcome to Finishing Off Part 1. We are pretty much at the end of the section. That doesn't mean it's the end of the development of this game, by the way. What I'm going to be encouraging you to do is to revisit this game once you have done the next section, and then you're going to back apply all your knowledge. In fact, in a moment, I'm going to be challenging you to do that with Building Escape 2. But this video is about fixing a few things up. A starting health bug will be gone by the end of it, and also we will be able to arrange that the AI tank stops firing back at us once we've killed him, which seems only fair, and that once we're dead, we will also not be able to control our tank. We'll go into a spectator mode. In fact, if I wait one more second, you'll be able to see that. There you go. So I'm kind of depossessed, and I'm floating around the world as a ghost, watching my poor old tank being dead. So I will see you in there. So I'm going to throw you straight into a series of challenges with this video, and then I'm going to clarify some of them as we go. So I don't know how you got on in the last video, whether you got as far as getting the delegation through to the player controller when the tank dies, but if you didn't, then I'd like you to finish that off, do exactly the same as we did in the AI controller, and call a method called start spectating only inside the player controller's delegate, whatever you choose. So when the tank dies, the player controller starts spectating only. Also, inside the AI controller that we did get as far, if you remember, as writing a log entry for, let's just take a look for context. It was here, we just said received. So instead of that, let's use the detach from controller pending destroy method. Look that up, see what you need to call it on, etc., and use that method. And that's going to prevent the tank from driving once it's been destroyed. Another thing, fix the starting health bug. This is a very varied challenge here as we're nearing the end of the section here. So let me show you the starting health bug first, and then you can fix it. So if you look at your tank and you go in and you choose a different starting health of, say, 300, and you compile your blueprint, what you would hope is that it would work. So next up, fix the starting health bug. If we go over to our tank, and open up the blueprint, you'll find that if you adjust the starting health value on the tank blueprint, that we get a problem. Let me show you. So we go here, say 250 or 350, doesn't matter, anything but 100, and we play the game. Look, the tanks are starting without full health. So that needs sorting out, otherwise we're not going to be able to override the starting health. See if you can work out what's going on there. Use the noise landscape function to undulate it. Let me just show you that. So if we go back to modes and then landscape and then sculpt, you'll find here you've got a noise method. Set yourself some appropriate parameters and just make the ground a little bit more undulating than it is right now. It's very flat and boring. Make sure there's no really flat areas. Let's have it much more organic. And while you're there, you're probably going to want to be increasing the size of your nav mesh here if it's not already covering the whole terrain. And if you want another challenge, then make the auto mortars damageable. Put some auto mortars back in the scene and make them damageable in exactly the same way as we did the tank. And finally, check your code against Unreal's coding standards. Now, if you're going to do that, only read down in their standards as far, I would suggest, as the end of comments, because otherwise it's too much to take on at this stage of the course. To take all this on in one go is too much to remember. But let's try and make sure that your code and the code we've written together is complying with these standards all the way down to the end of comments, and that you understand the standards down to there. That's it, really. You don't need to do all of those. This is I'm gonna go through and solve all these things as the solution, but that is the challenge. There you go. So pause the video, have a go at one or many of those right now, and I'll see you for the solutions. Okay, welcome back. So I'm going to do solution number 2 first. I'm going to use this detach from controller pending destroy inside the AI tank. And the reason I'm going to do that first is because we're already there. We're just sitting there ready to go. So what do we need to do? How does this detach from controller pending destroy? So what I hope you did is controller pending destroy. Take a look on the web, find out what it's all about, get as much documentation as you can about it. And you can see that it's a method on pawn. So we're going to need to get hold of the pawn as the first port of call in this. So here we are inside the onPossessTankDeath method of the tank AI controller. And what we're going to want to do is say if not ensure get pawn. So the first thing we want to do is we want to ensure that we have a pawn. In fact, because this could only go wrong at runtime, we probably don't even want a ensure in there. So just if not get pawn, because we don't want an assertion firing off at runtime when the player is running. But if you want it running the game, so if you what you can do is put insure in for now, make sure that it works, and then put yourself a note to remove it. That's one good way of doing things. But think carefully before leaving an insure in your final production code. So to do remove if okay. Okay, so if not get pawn, then we need to return. I'm going to check my bracket matching. Remember, you can click on a bracket to see what its partner is. And actually, that is the appropriate number of brackets. It looks like a lot. So we need to make sure we've got a pawn. And once we've got a pawn, it's pretty easy. We can go ahead and just get the pawn again. No harm in doing it twice. It's a very quick operation. And detach from controller pending destroy. Great. Okay, so that is the implementation of that method. Let's go ahead and compile that and just make sure that that works properly on the AI tank. Let's make sure that once the AI tank is dead, that it does not does not be controlled or moved or fired by the AI tank anymore. So I'm not sure how well the tank death is going to work right now with this starting health bug. I think what I'll do is actually sort that starting health bug out right at the same time so that we've got some control over that and we can wind it down. So what is the starting health bug? It's quite simple. In the tank.h, we have starting health equals 100 and then current health equals starting health. Well, in this regime, the current health is always going to equal 100. If we change the starting health in the blueprint, it's too late. The current health in the C++ has already been set to 100. So we need to take this current health initialization out of here. So I'm just not going to initialize at all. I'm going to say not initialized or initialized in begin play. Okay, because that's the sensible time to do it. The tank constructor is too soon. Trying to do it in here is not going to work because the C++ constructor will have run before the blueprint comes along and overrides the value. So we need to put the begin play back in. That's not too difficult. It's void a tank : begin play. And then you just literally in there say what we were saying over here, which is current health equals starting health. So we give the tank its health at the start. We just need to override begin play because it's not currently there, so that's here. There we go. Now, the health bug should have gone. Let's recompile. And we'll just check that the health bug's there. We can give it very low starting health, like, well, even 20, so that we can kill it in a single hit, and then we can test to see that the AI tank stops firing once it's dead. So 2 bugs in 1. Looking at our list, we've got a couple of things checked off if this works. One is number 2. That's confusing. Firstly, number 2, and the other one is the starting health. So we're dealing with 2 and 3 here. All right, let's go to the tank, give him a health of just 40, starting health. Now, the first symptom will be that the health bars are actually full. We have an ensure assertion failure. What's the problem here? Let's take a look at that. Always take them seriously. We have a barrel missing somewhere. So ensure condition failing on the barrel. What's the problem? Is the tank blueprint compiling? Is the barrel being set in the tank? Does seem to be. I'm just going to save and recompile that, clear the logs and just try again. Okay, so we have the tank not compiling properly. Let's look at the message logs and have a look down in the compiler logs, see if there's anything here. And there isn't. So what could be going on in this instance? This is a strange bug, isn't it? We've just done something seemingly simple and innocent and we've broken our game. Nothing's working properly. The tanks aren't aiming. Well, when you override, and well done if you spotted this, your begin play, remember to call super begin play. Otherwise, we're overriding the method and then interfering with the engine's operation. And it means the begin play won't be being called on any of the tanks. So super begin play needs to go in there. Let's just recap the code while we compile to make good use of that time. In the tank.h, we are just removing the starting health initialization. We're overriding begin play. Then we are just simply saying in begin play, current health equals starting health. Okay, let's take a look. We have a value of 40 there. First good sign is that our bars are at full height. Now let's fire and hit the enemy tank. He's got half the health now. That means he is taking 20 damage per hit. Now he's dead. Now, the key will be, does that AI tank stop firing at me? We could depossess and go and have a butcher's hook or a look at him and see, but it does look like he is defunct now. And that's because the AI controller is detached from that tank and it's no longer trying to fire or aim at us. Great, so that solution is done. What was the other challenge? It was use a start spectating only method call in the player controller. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to do the same magic on the player controller as we did on the AI controller. So you remember what we did? We said, let's subscribe our local method to the tank's death event. Well, we're going to do exactly the same thing on the tank player controller. So let's just do it by analogy. Where did we do it? We did it in set pawn. So my God, it's going to be almost exactly the same work as we did here. So let's go and copy everything from the tank AI controller for the moment, being careful because we're going to be bringing across this class name amongst other things. But let's copy that because it's a good starting point. Pop over to the tank player controller, and I think just above begin play, I'm going to pop that in. Immediately change your class name because otherwise it ain't going to work. So there you go, from tank player controller. Now let's look at this code and see if it's reasonable. We are calling super, we are asking if a pawn came in, we're doing the same thing about possessed tank, or you could call it controlled tank, but it's actually the same thing. And then we are delegating out to a method not in the tank AI controller, but in the tank player controller, called on possessed, or shall we say on controlled tank death. Doesn't really matter, possessed is okay. That's absolutely fine. So that's good. Now what we need to do is declare this set pawn method. So let's just do that. It's all very well putting into the C++, but it also needs to be here in the header file. So that's done using Visual Studio's tool. That was pretty handy. Then the other thing we need to do is create this A-tank player controller on possessed tank death method. I'm going to put it straight under here so I can see what I'm doing. It's a pretty simple method. It's void like this. And what we're going to call inside that method is just what I gave you in the hints. It is this simple call to start spectating only. Now, if we could, we'd do this without a method. Methods with just one line of code in them aren't great, but in order to provide a delegate like this, you do actually need to do this. Now, it's going to complain about a tank because currently we don't have a tank included. Now that we are having the tank player controller process some of these multicast delegates from the tank, we are going to hash include the tank. Okay. So let's have a look. Let's see if that will compile. I've just done exactly the same thing on, there's one thing that won't compile, which is on possessed tank death. I have not declared. So let me declare that now. It's going to be slow, then I'm just going to do it manually. I'm going to put it in the public of the tank player controller header file. And remember, it needs to be a U function. Okay. So that was never going to work. Let's just see if we can compile now. Now, while we try and compile, let me keep you up to date with what we're doing with the player controller header file. We've done just this. And the player controller C++ file, we've done a bunch of stuff. Remember, you can always go to the course's GitHub to see all of the changes. Okay, how are we doing with this compilation? Must be nearly there. Compile failed. That's not abnormal when you make a load of changes. Let's see what's wrong. So on line 25, we have an error in the tank player controller header file. So that sounds like a simple thing. Missing a semicolon, rookie error there. Happens to all of us. So recompiling again now with roughly the same code. And then hopefully by the end of that, we'll have completed challenges 1, 2, and 3. So how would we know? Well, I need to get blasted, don't I? So that we know that once I'm blasted, that I'm in spectator mode. I'm still able to control this tank, but now look, this time, when I got this hit the second time, I've slightly jarringly dived out into a spectator-only mode, but I cannot control my tank, which is exactly what we wanted. Let's just see that happen again. Now, I think in this section, we haven't got room. I'm trying to keep this section to 100 lectures for various reasons, including the fact you guys will probably start losing motivation. There is no point really now in me putting up a pop-up menu here because we're going to do that type of thing in the next section, and you can come back and make the changes to Battle Tank once you've learned how to do it in the next section. That allows me to teach you these things only once. You'll see more about that in the end of section video. So that's done. This detach from player controller and start spectating only, all done. Now let's use some noise on the landscape briefly. So this is going to turn out to be a slightly longer video for you. And I think what I'll do to prevent it becoming tiring is just split it over 2 parts. So I have done numbers 1, 2, and 3 in this challenge so far. In the next video, we're going to put some noise in the landscape, make the auto mortars damageable, and also do a little bit of code checking. So I will see you there.